On June 6, 1944, the beaches of Normandy became the stage for one of the largest military operations in history. Known as D-Day, this was the moment when the Allies took a decisive step toward liberating Europe from Nazi control. But what made this invasion so crucial, and how did it change the course of World War II? In 1944, Adolf Hitler's Third Reich had firm control over most of Western Europe. France had been under Nazi occupation since 1940, and much of the continent was suffering under the oppressive rule of the Axis powers. In the East, the Soviet Union had been fighting a brutal and costly war against German forces, slowly pushing them back after the decisive Battle of Stalingrad in 1943. However, despite the Soviet advances, the war was far from over. The Western Allies, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, recognized that without opening a second front in Western Europe, the war would likely drag on for years, with even greater losses on all sides. The pressure on the Allied forces to act was immense. By 1944, the Axis powers still held considerable strength, and Adolf Hitler was determined to repel any invasion attempts. The Allies needed a bold and decisive operation, one that would break the Nazi stranglehold on Western Europe and relieve the pressure on the Soviet Union in the East. This need gave birth to one of the most ambitious military operations in history, Operation Overlord. Operation Overlord wasn't just another military maneuver. It was the result of one of the most intricate planning processes in military history. The operation involved months of detailed coordination. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower, tasked with leading the invasion, knew that success would require precise timing, perfect logistics, and unwavering cooperation between the Allied forces. One of the most significant challenges in planning Operation Overlord was determining the exact location for the invasion. While the Allies knew they needed to strike the northern coast of France, they had to choose between several potential landing sites, including the heavily defended port of Calais. Ultimately, Normandy was selected due to its relatively lighter defenses, its proximity to the English coast, and its strategic value as a gateway into occupied France. However, the German fortifications, known as the Atlantic Wall, still posed a significant challenge. To breach these defenses, the Allies needed a perfect combination of surprise, air superiority, and overwhelming force. The logistics behind Overlord were staggering. Coordinating an amphibious assault of this scale required meticulous attention to every detail, from landing craft availability to the timing of air support. Over 150,000 troops would have to be transported across the English Channel, along with thousands of tons of equipment, ammunition, and supplies. Meanwhile, the air forces would need to neutralize German defenses from above, and the naval fleet would provide bombardment and support. One of the critical aspects of the planning was the deception campaign, codenamed Operation Bodyguard. This elaborate plan was designed to mislead the Germans about the true invasion location. The Allies created fake armies, used double agents, and spread false intelligence, leading the Germans to believe the invasion would come at Calais. On the morning of June 6, 1944, the world witnessed the largest amphibious assault in history. The Allied forces stormed 5 beaches along the Normandy coast, each with its own unique challenges and fierce resistance from German troops. These beaches were codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, and their capture was essential for securing a foothold in Nazi-occupied France. The American forces were tasked with landing at Utah and Omaha. While the landings at Utah were relatively successful, with fewer casualties and faster progress inland, Omaha Beach was a different story. The Germans had fortified the cliffs, overlooking the beach with heavy artillery, machine gun nests, and obstacles designed to impede the landing craft. As the first waves of American soldiers approached Omaha, they were met with a hail of gunfire. Many were cut down before they even reached the shore, and the survivors found themselves pinned down on the beach, facing an almost impossible task. The chaos was palpable, with soldiers struggling to find cover and regroup as the German defenses held firm. The cost was staggering. Over 2,000 American soldiers lost their lives at Omaha Beach alone. But by the end of the day, the beachhead was secure. Further east, British and Canadian forces landed on Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. Here too, the fighting was fierce, but the Allied forces were better able to neutralize the German defenses. At Gold Beach, the British 50th Infantry Division made significant advances, taking the town of Arromanches, which would later become a critical hub for Allied supplies. The Canadians, landing at Juno Beach, faced similarly intense resistance, but managed to push several miles inland, capturing strategic positions. Sword Beach, the easternmost landing site, saw British forces land in the shadow of Caen, a key objective for the invasion. Although the British made progress, they were unable to capture Caen on D-Day, and it would take several weeks of bitter fighting before the city fell. By the end of June 6th, the Allies had secured all 5 beaches, but the cost had been immense. Thousands of men lay dead or wounded, and the fate of the invasion still hung in the balance. The success of the landings had given the Allies a foothold in France, but the battle for Normandy was far from over. The next phase of Operation Overlord would see weeks of brutal fighting as the Allies attempted to push further into France and liberate Europe from Nazi control. The success of the D-Day invasion marked a critical turning point in World War II, not just for the Allies, but for the course of global history. The Normandy landings represented the opening of the long-awaited Second Front in Europe, one that the Soviet Union had been urging for years. By 1944, the Soviets were bearing the brunt of the war on the Eastern Front, and without an invasion in the West, there was a genuine risk that the war would continue for years, with catastrophic losses on all sides. Operation Overlord shifted the balance of power decisively. It forced Nazi Germany to fight a two-front war, stretching their already thin resources. Before D-Day, German forces had been focused primarily on the Eastern Front, where they were locked in brutal combat with the advancing Soviet armies. The Western Front, while fortified with the Atlantic Wall, had not seen the same intensity of fighting. But after the landings, Germany was forced to divert significant troops and resources to defend against the advancing Allies in France. The psychological impact of the invasion was also profound. Hitler's grip on Western Europe, which had seemed unbreakable for years, was suddenly in jeopardy. The successful landings shattered the illusion of Nazi invincibility and gave hope to the millions of people suffering under Axis occupation. In cities across occupied Europe, resistance movements gained renewed strength, emboldened by the fact that liberation might finally be within reach. For the Allied forces, the Normandy invasion proved that their joint efforts and military strategies were capable of delivering a decisive blow against the Axis powers. The successful coordination between the British, American, and Canadian forces on D-Day was a remarkable achievement, showing that the lessons learned from earlier failures, such as the disastrous Dieppe raid in 1942, had been put to good use. The landings also highlighted the importance of technological and logistical innovations, from the development of specialized landing craft to the artificial harbors known as mulberries that allowed supplies to flow into France after the beaches were secured. Most importantly, D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Within weeks, the Allies had liberated large portions of northern France, and by August 1944, Paris was freed. This set the stage for the Allies' march toward Germany, culminating in the fall of Berlin in May 1945. Operation Overlord and the success of D-Day not only hastened the defeat of Hitler's regime, but also helped shape the post-war world order. It laid the groundwork for the eventual Allied victory and the liberation of Europe from fascism. The success of Operation Overlord and the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, was a monumental achievement that changed the course of World War II. It wasn't just the result of strategic brilliance and military coordination. It was also a testament to the courage and determination of the soldiers who faced unimaginable danger on the beaches of Normandy. Thousands of men gave their lives that day, sacrificing everything in the name of freedom and the fight against tyranny. D-Day demonstrated the strength of international cooperation. The Allied forces, made up of soldiers from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and other nations, worked together with a single, unified goal to liberate Europe from Nazi occupation. This cooperation was essential, not just for the success of the invasion, but for the future of the post-war world. It laid the foundation for lasting alliances, such as NATO, and helped shape the global order for decades to come. Looking back, it's clear that the Normandy Invasion was one of the most significant military operations in history. It marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany, setting in motion a series of events that would lead to the eventual collapse of the Third Reich. Within a year of D-Day, Hitler would be dead, and Europe would be on the road to recovery, though not without scars. As we reflect on the legacy of D-Day, it's important to remember the bravery, sacrifice, and resolve of the soldiers who fought on the beaches that day. Their actions not only changed the course of the war, but also shaped the future of the free world. Today, we honor their memory and the countless others who fought to ensure that the ideals of democracy and freedom would prevail over tyranny. If you've enjoyed learning about this crucial moment in history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more content that explores pivotal moments in our past.